I have spent my entire life running from difficult and stormy weather. I moved to Boulder last year because I loved nothing more than blue skies and a sunny day. I ran away from home when I was 5 years old because I never knew when the next storm was going to hit. One minute my mother was totally fine, and the next minute she was screaming and shouting and slamming doors and telling me what a terrible child I was. I never felt safe in my own home. I had no idea that storms and clouds could follow you, and so I kept on running. I was the only one of my 4 sisters to go away to boarding school. I couldn't wait to get out of my house. And then I went and studied in France during college. I traveled for 7 months all over Asia in my 20s and lived in Europe for 20 years. I knew that my family was its own weather system, full of tornadoes and hurricanes and completely unpredictable storms. I really thought if I kept on running, I could avoid the system. I had no idea that the weather system was inside me. It wasn't until I was living in the south of France with my 3 young children that I got this funny feeling that there was a storm brewing. And then came the perfect storm. In the course of a few months, I lost everything. My business partner and best friend and work colleague abandoned me completely and the business we had started. My son, who has OCD, was in a full-on crisis, and I felt like I had totally lost everything. Most importantly, I had lost myself. And when this happened, it was like all of those clouds and bad days that I had stuffed away somewhere, trying to avoid them, thinking that away was actually a place, came rushing up like this tidal wave and took over my entire body. The more that I tried to push them away and stop the feeling, the more that they came up, and I kept pushing and they kept coming, until I was actually standing in panic attacks all day long. This went on for months, and then I found myself one day in Mougins, France, in the grocery store, standing in front of the meat counter, shaking and trembling and wondering what I was going to do to feed my kids that night. I had no idea what to buy. I had no idea how I was going to cook it. I knew that I was a complete failure as a mother, as a wife. I didn't know how I got there, literally in that store, and I certainly didn't know how I got there in this place in my life. I couldn't stand the storm that was raging inside me anymore. I knew that I had to bring it to an end, and so I made a plan. That afternoon, I went home and I went straight into my bathroom. I opened the cabinet and I took out the pills, the boxes of pills that I had been prescribed during these many months of my depression. They were in those little packages in a sheet where there's in the foil, and I sat on the floor of my bathroom punching out the pills to put them all in a little container. I needed to have them easily accessible, and as I sat there punching each pill, I made my plan. I was going to drive down to the ocean, which was just 10 minutes from my house. And I was going to take the pills and walk into the ocean because I knew I didn't want to fail at this. I craved the peace and calm of the water. And so that night, I got in bed. I waited until my husband was asleep. And I peeled back the covers and slid out of my bed. I made it to the bathroom and I grabbed my pills. I got about halfway down the hallway to my front door when I heard my husband come up behind me and say, "Lois, what are you doing? Come back to bed, babe." I was shaking and trembling as I walked back to my bed. The storm was really raging and I was furious that I didn't get out of the house. I lay in bed with the tears rolling down as I waited for my husband to go back to sleep. This time, when I heard him snoring, I peeled back the covers even more carefully and slid my body out of the bed. Again, I got almost to the front door when my husband appeared and said, "Lois, really, what are you doing? Come back to sleep." That happened 5 times that night. As I lay there in between, I kept wondering, what was worse for my kids, to have a mother that took her own life, or to have a mother who was crazy for the rest of her life like mine? I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew that if I didn't want the weather system to be there for my kids, I had to weather the storm. I didn't think I could do it, but I had to do it for them. When the sun came up in the morning, I went into my bathroom, I took the bottle of pills, and I dumped it into the toilet. I flushed the toilet. I made my decision. I was going to weather the storm. I went in to make breakfast for my kids, and I knew that something was really different. I was going to learn how to feel all that I can feel. I was going to change the weather system in my family, and I was going to find the peace and calm that comes after the storm.